When I entered the room, I never expected to witness the ultimate betrayal. My wife tangled in the arms of another man, completely unaware of my presence. My heart pounded, my world shattered, but the real storm came after. As emotions ran high, painful truths unraveled, and a confrontation that neither of us were prepared for unfolded. But what happened next was something even I didn't see coming. Would I forgive? Would I fight? Or would I walk away forever? The truth lies ahead in a story of love, deception, and the painful path to self-discovery. The air was thick with an unsettling quiet as I stepped into our apartment that night. Something felt off. Maybe it was the way the walls seemed to close in on me, or maybe it was the unfamiliar stillness that made my skin prickle. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had left work early, driven by an inexplicable unease gnawing at my insides. I moved down the dimly lit hallway, my footsteps deliberately slow, as if my subconscious already knew what was waiting for me behind that door. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob, an irrational hope still clinging to the idea that I was just being paranoid. That my wife, Elena, was simply resting or reading a book, waiting for me like she always did. But as the door creaked open, my world collapsed. There, tangled in a twisted, breathless mess of sheets and limbs, was Elena, my wife, the woman I had pledged my life to. And with her, in the very bed we had shared for years, was Damien, my so-called friend. For a moment, they didn't notice me. They were lost in their betrayal, caught up in their passion, too absorbed in their secret world to hear the door open. I felt frozen, my brain struggling to register what my eyes were seeing. My heart pounded violently, as if trying to burst out of my chest, trying to escape the unbearable pain. Then, Elena's eyes met mine. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, her body stiffening in horror. Damien turned too, his face going pale as he scrambled to pull the sheets over himself, as if that could somehow undo the sin that had already been committed. I took a slow step forward, my fists clenched so tight that my knuckles turned white. "Elena," I said, my voice barely above a whisper that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, of shattered trust, of a love that had just been set on fire and burned to ash before my eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she grabbed the sheet and wrapped it around herself, her wide, tear-filled eyes darting between me and Damien. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, a deafening drum drowning out the silence. Damien swallowed hard and sat up. "Ethan, I held up a hand, stopping him before he could continue. "Don't." My voice was firm now, the initial shock hardening into something unbreakable. "Don't you dare." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "Coward." Elena finally found her voice, though it was weak, trembling. "Ethan, I can explain." I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Explain?" I repeated, tasting the word as if it were poison on my tongue. "You want to explain this? What exactly is there to explain, Elena? That I just walked in on my wife in bed with another man? That my best friend decided I wasn't worth a shred of loyalty?" Tears streamed down her face. "It's not like that." I took another step forward, and she flinched. "Then tell me, Elena," I said coldly. "How is it exactly? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her lip quivering. Damien shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan, listen." I turned to him, rage boiling beneath my skin. "You do not get to speak." I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You do not get to justify this. You do not get to pretend you're anything but a lying, backstabbing piece of trash." He lowered his gaze. I turned back to Elena, my chest heaving. "How long?" I demanded. She wiped at her tears, her voice barely audible. "A few months. A few months." I felt the wind get knocked out of me. A few months of stolen moments. A few months of whispered lies. A few months of my wife giving herself to another man while looking me in the eye every single day and telling me she loved me. The realization was a dagger through my soul. "Get out," I said, my voice hollow. Damien hesitated. "Ethan, please." I said, "Get out." I roared, my composure snapping like a brittle thread. He scrambled for his clothes, throwing them on in haste, and bolted past me, not daring to look back. Elena, still wrapped in the sheet, sobbed harder. "Ethan, please, we can talk about this." I shook my head, my throat tightening. "There's nothing left to talk about." I turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind the wreckage of the life I thought I had. But I wasn't the one who was lost. They were, and I would make sure I never looked back. I stepped out of the bedroom, my mind spiraling in a whirlwind of emotions. The hallway felt longer than usual, stretching endlessly before me, as if the walls themselves were trying to trap me inside this nightmare. My body moved on its own, fueled by instincts rather than thought. My chest felt hollow, my throat dry, my vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer weight of betrayal. Behind me, I could still hear Elena's broken sobs. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. I entered the living room, the dim glow of the evening sun casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. Everything looked the same. The couch where we had once curled up watching movies. The framed photographs capturing moments of laughter and happiness. The bookshelves she had insisted we install, filled with novels we had picked out together. How cruel, how absurd that everything around me remained untouched, unchanged, when my entire world had just shattered into irreparable pieces. Elena, I swear if you don't let me explain. Her voice cut through the silence, shaky but desperate. She had followed me, her bare feet padding softly against the wooden floor. I turned slowly, forcing myself to meet her tear-streaked face. Explain? My voice came out calm, but there was an edge to it, a sharp blade hidden beneath the surface. Go ahead, Elena. Explain to me how you ended up in our bed with another man. Tell me how it was just a misunderstanding. Convince me. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. A sob choked out instead. Elena. I took a slow step forward. Tell me the truth. No lies. No excuses. No sugarcoating. When did it start? Her lips trembled, and she squeezed her eyes shut as if wishing she could rewind time, erase everything. 4 months ago. The words hit me harder than I expected. I had braced myself, prepared myself for the impact, but it still sent a cold, paralyzing wave through my body. 4 months. I let out a bitter chuckle. 4 months, I echoed, shaking my head. And during those 4 months, how many times did you lie to me? How many times did you kiss me goodnight after being with him? How many times did you look me in the eye and tell me you loved me? I do love you, she whispered, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. My jaw tightened. Don't, I said, my voice dangerously low. Don't you dare say that to me right now. She flinched. Ethan, I made a mistake. A mistake. I cut her off, scoffing. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something hurtful in anger. A mistake is not an affair that lasted 4 months. That was a choice, Elena. Repeatedly. Over and over again. You made a choice. Her sobs grew louder. I wasn't thinking straight. I was lost. I slammed my fist onto the coffee table, causing her to jolt. Stop making excuses. Just admit it. Admit that you wanted him more than you wanted me. She shook her head wildly, her hands gripping her arms as if trying to hold herself together. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about wanting him more. It just happened. I was weak, and he was there, and I got caught up in something I never meant to. That word again. It just happened. As if betrayal was some accident, some unfortunate twist of fate rather than a deliberate act of dishonesty. I exhaled, trying to suppress the rage burning inside me. So what now? You expect me to just forgive you? To pretend this never happened? To pick up the pieces like nothing's changed? Her lip quivered. I don't know, she admitted. But I don't want to lose you. A humorless laugh escaped me. Elena, you lost me the second you let him touch you. Silence. And then, a hesitant knock at the door. I turned my head sharply, my patience already stretched too thin. The door creaked open slightly. And there he was. Damien. I saw red. He had the audacity to come back, to stand here, after everything, with his face twisted in shame, as if that somehow made him less of a coward. I was across the room in an instant, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the doorframe before he could get another word out. You have 3 seconds to get the hell away from my home before I break every single bone in your body. I growled, my grip tightening. Damien's eyes were wide, but he didn't fight back. Ethan, listen. 1. I didn't mean. 2. I swear 3. I shoved him backward. He stumbled, catching himself, his face twisting in something between fear and regret. But I didn't care. I didn't care about his reasons, his apologies, his pathetic attempt at remorse. Get out, I said through gritted teeth. He hesitated. Get out, I roared, and this time he obeyed. He turned and disappeared down the hallway, leaving only his shadow behind. I slammed the door shut. For a moment, neither Elena nor I spoke. The weight of everything settled between us, suffocating, heavy, impossible to ignore. Finally, I turned to her one last time. "I'll be gone by morning," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any warmth. "Don't try to stop me." Her lips parted as if to argue, but she must have seen the finality in my eyes, because she said nothing. And so, I walked past her, past the wreckage of what we once were, and started packing my things. I wasn't the one who was lost. She was, and I would make sure I never looked back. The night stretched on, thick with silence, as I packed my belongings into a suitcase. The room felt foreign to me now, as if I were standing inside a house that had been burned down, only the ashes of its former warmth remaining. Each item I picked up, my clothes, my books, even my toothbrush, felt like another reminder of the life I had built with Elena, a life that had crumbled into nothing within a matter of minutes. She stood near the doorway, wrapped in a robe, watching me with red-rimmed eyes. She had stopped crying, but her face was still damp from the tears she had shed. I could feel her gaze on me, heavy with regret, with unspoken pleas, but I refused to acknowledge it. "Ethan," she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I just kept folding my shirts, my movements robotic, detached. "Please," she tried again, stepping closer. "Just talk to me. One last time." I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Talk about what, Elena?" I said without looking up. "About how you threw away our marriage for 4 months of lies. About how every time you kissed me, you had already been in his bed." She winced as if my words physically hurt her. I don't know how to make you understand how sorry I am." I finally looked up, my expression unreadable. "You can't." She swallowed hard. "But we had so much together, Ethan. Years of love, memories, everything we've been through. Doesn't that mean anything?" A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "Of course, it means something," I said. "It means I was blind. It means I gave my heart to someone who never truly valued it. And it means I need to walk away before I lose any more of myself to this lie." She reached out as if to touch me, but I stepped back, avoiding her hand. "Elena," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I loved you. God, I loved you more than anything. And maybe, in some twisted way, you loved me too. But love isn't supposed to feel like this. Love isn't supposed to be betrayal, deception, or heartbreak. Love is a choice. And every single time you chose him, you made it clear where your heart truly was." Tears welled up in her eyes again. "It wasn't like that." I held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want to hear it. Not anymore." I zipped up my suitcase and grabbed my keys. This was it. The last step. The final goodbye. Elena took a shaky breath. "Where will you go?" I shrugged. "I don't know yet. But anywhere is better than here." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. I just want you to know that I never wanted to lose you." I stared at her for a long moment before answering. "You lost me the moment you let him have you." With that, I turned and walked out the door, not looking back. The night air was crisp against my skin as I stepped outside, the weight on my chest growing lighter with every step I took. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I was free. This wasn't the ending I had imagined for us. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something better. Something where I finally chose myself.